I don't believe it.
He accidentally sees his maid completely exposed. What he didn't know, he wouldn't be able to get her out of his head anymore.
Welcome to my library. I'm Lena, and our story is just beginning.
Chapter 1. The Most Embarrassing Morning.
I've got you.
When I accepted that job as a private housekeeper for $8,000, I thought I'd won the lottery. 1 month, just 30 days cleaning someone's house, and I'd solve all my problems at once. The overdue tuition would disappear like magic. The equipment for my clinical internship would finally be mine, and I could breathe again without feeling that tightness in my chest every time I looked at my bank account. But I should have been suspicious, because nothing in life comes that easy. Not for me, at least. And definitely not when the address I got by text led me to the gates of a mansion that looked like it came out of some movie about billionaires. I stood there in front for a good 5 minutes, staring at the intercom like it was going to bite me, wondering if it wouldn't be better to turn around and go back to my tiny apartment where at least I knew exactly how big my financial misery was. But $8,000, Avery. $8,000 damn dollars that would solve everything. So I took a deep breath, pressed the button, and almost fell backward when a tall man in a black suit opened the gate and looked me up and down with that expression I couldn't tell if it was curiosity or amusement. "You must be the new housekeeper," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I'm Julian, Mr. Kane's assistant. Come in." Kane. The last name echoed in my head as I followed Julian down a path of perfect stones to the main entrance, and my stomach started doing that weird dance that usually means something really bad is about to happen. Kane wasn't exactly a common last name, and I only knew one Kane in my entire life. But it couldn't be him. Of course it couldn't be him. Because what kind of cruel universe would put Maggie Mitchell's daughter to work as a housekeeper in Dominic Kane's house, the man my mother considered family, but who I had express orders to keep my distance from, because his world was too dangerous for people like me. "Mr. Kane is traveling," Julian continued, as he guided me through hallways that seemed endless, all decorated with taste so expensive I was afraid to touch anything. "He returns tomorrow morning. I'll show you your room and explain your duties." I should have asked for the boss's full name, should have investigated more before accepting, but need has that way of making you skip important steps. And now I was here, in what was clearly the house of someone extremely rich and possibly dangerous, hoping that Kane was just a coincidence. "Mr. Kane," I said, trying to sound casual as Julian opened the door to a room that was bigger than my entire apartment. "What's his first name?" Julian looked at me with a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dominic," he answered, and my heart simply plummeted to my stomach. "Dominic Kane. Do you know him?" My mouth went dry. My tongue weighed about 10 tons, and for a second I seriously considered faking a fainting spell, but that would be too dramatic even for me, so I just swallowed hard and nodded. "He's my mom's friend, like an uncle to me." The words came out half-choked, half-lies, because Dominic Kane was never really my uncle. It was just what my mother insisted I call him since I was a kid. The mysterious man who showed up every now and then with expensive gifts, and that look that seemed to see things no one else saw. "This is going to be interesting," Julian said, and this time his smile grew for real, like he knew some joke I hadn't understood yet. I spent that entire night in the impeccable room, lying in a bed that probably cost more than my car, trying to decide whether to stay or run before Uncle Dom. No, before Dominic came back and found out I was there. But the $8,000 shone in my mind like a beacon of necessity, and I convinced myself that 1 month would go by fast, that he wouldn't even notice me much, that I'd be invisible like every housekeeper should be, and everything would be fine. Famous last words from Avery Mitchell. The next morning, I woke up early, did my morning exercises like I always do, because physical therapy isn't just my future profession, it's my lifestyle. And I was there in the middle of the room in a sports bra and leggings, stretching my arms up and humming some silly song that had stuck in my head when the door simply opened. No warning, no knock, just opened, and there he was. Dominic Kane in all his glory at 6 in the morning, standing in my bedroom doorway, wearing black dress pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His dark hair kind of messy, like he'd run his hands through it several times. And those eyes I remembered from when I was a kid, but that now seemed 1,000 times more intense fixed on me, or rather, fixed on my half-naked body. Time froze. Literally froze because neither of us moved for at least 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Him looking me up and down at a speed that should be illegal, registering every inch of exposed skin, and me looking at him with that kind of horror that only comes when you realize you're practically naked in front of the man you're supposed to call uncle, but that you definitely could never call that again after this moment. My brain took a while to process, but when it processed, I screamed. A high-pitched and embarrassed scream that probably woke up the entire neighborhood, even though the neighborhood was miles away. And I grabbed the nearest pillow to cover myself, while he turned around so fast he almost hit the door. "Fuck!" he yelled, and hearing Dominic Kane, the always controlled and elegant man, curse like that would be funny if I wasn't dying of embarrassment. "Uncle Dom?" I yelled back, and my voice came out half hysterical, too high-pitched. "Avery!" he responded, and there was as much shock in his voice as in mine. "What are you doing here? I work here. What are you doing in my room? Your room? This is my—" He stopped, seemed to process something, and then yelled, "Julian!" I heard quick footsteps in the hallway and then Julian's voice, clearly amused. "Yes, boss. Why is there a half-naked woman in my old room?" Dom asked, still with his back to me, and I could see the tension in his shoulders even through the shirt. "They remodeled," Julian responded with that annoying calm. "Your room is at the end of the hall now. And why didn't anyone tell me the housekeeper was Avery? You didn't ask for a name. Technically true, I figured, and almost laughed but was too busy trying to pull a sweatshirt over my head with trembling hands. "You can turn around now," I said, my voice coming out tiny, and when he turned slowly, like he was afraid of what he'd find, I was completely covered, but my face was probably the color of a ripe tomato. He looked at me, and something passed through his eyes that I couldn't identify, something between embarrassment and something else that made my stomach tie in a strange knot. "Good morning," he said, and his voice was rougher than normal. "Morning," I replied, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me. The next half hour was the most uncomfortable of my entire life, and look, I've been through a lot of embarrassing stuff, but making coffee for the man who just saw me in a sports bra, the man I was supposed to call uncle but who I could now only see as a man, tall, muscular, dangerously handsome, was a completely new level of torture. He sat at the kitchen island, avoiding looking directly at me, and the silence was so thick I could cut it with a knife. "Does your mother know you're here?" he finally asked, his fingers drumming on the marble counter. "She knows I got a job as a housekeeper," I replied, focusing very intently on pouring coffee into the cup. "She doesn't know it's at your house. She's going to kill me. She's going to kill me first." I put the cup in front of him, and our eyes met by accident. And again that strange thing passed between us, that new and unwanted awareness. He picked up the cup, his long fingers wrapping around the porcelain, and I forced my eyes away. "1 month," he said after a sip. "You need the money. I need a housekeeper. But this," he gestured vaguely between us, "never happens again." "Agreed," I said too quickly. "I knock on doors now, and I lock them." The silence returned, heavy and strange, until he spoke again, and this time there was a touch of humor in his voice. "Nice. Morning exercises." I grabbed the nearest dish towel and threw it at him without thinking. "Don't talk about it." He caught the towel in the air, and then did something I didn't expect. He laughed, a real laugh, low and rough, that completely transformed his face. And my heart did that stupid thing of skipping a beat. But when the laughter passed and the silence returned, I realized with growing horror that that image, him seeing me like that, me seeing his reaction, was engraved in my memory in a way I knew I'd never be able to erase. And by the way he avoided my gaze while drinking his coffee, fidgeting with the cup in an almost nervous way I'd never seen in him, he wasn't going to forget any time soon either. It was going to be a very, very long month. Chapter 2, Why She's Off Limits.
Don't stop.
3 days after the incident, I was still avoiding Dominic Kane like he was a contagious disease. Not that it was hard. He spent most of his time locked in his office, only coming out to eat something quick before disappearing again, and I made sure to be in another room whenever I heard his footsteps. But on the 5th night, when I was cleaning the living room, I found an old wooden box under the couch, probably had fallen from some shelf. I shouldn't have opened it, I know, invasion of privacy and all that, but curiosity won, and when I lifted the lid, my heart almost stopped. Photos, dozens of them. And in the first one, I recognized my mother instantly, younger, maybe in her 20s, smiling at the camera with a skinny boy in her arms, his eyes closed, white bandages covering his small torso. I flipped the photo over. Dominic. First week. He's going to survive. My hand trembled. There were more photos, all dated, all showing that same boy, sometimes sleeping, sometimes sitting in our old kitchen, sometimes with a small blonde child in his lap that I recognized as me. "That's not yours to go through." I almost dropped the box. Dominic was standing in the doorway, still in a suit, but his tie was loose and he looked exhausted, his eyes red like he hadn't slept properly. "Sorry, I just found it and—" "Sit," he said. It wasn't a request. I sat on the couch, holding the box like it was something precious, and he sat in the armchair across from me, far enough not to touch me, close enough for me to feel his intensity. "You want to know why your mother calls me son, and why you can never be more than a niece to me?" His voice was low, controlled, but there was something dangerous in it. Then I'll tell you. 22 years ago, 1998, the night was cold in a way that made bones ache, and Dominic Kane, 12 years old, was bleeding in the middle of an alley that smelled like trash and urine. He had tried to run. Stupid. So stupid. His uncle had made it clear that no one got out alive if they tried to run, but Dom had thought he was smart enough, fast enough. The bullet in his back proved otherwise. He was lying on his side, shaking, feeling the hot blood run down his back and pool beneath him, and all he could think was that he was going to die there, alone, in a disgusting place, and no one was going to care. His father had been dead for 6 months, murdered by a rival in the dirty business he controlled, and his uncle had taken over everything, including Dom's custody, which actually meant keeping the boy around in case he was useful in the future. But Dom had heard the conversation the night before. The kid's a problem. When he grows up, he'll want revenge. Better eliminate him now. So he had run, and now he was dying. Footsteps. He heard footsteps approaching and tried to shrink further into the shadows, but his body wasn't obeying properly. Everything was getting cold and distant. My God. A woman's voice. Soft. Scared. Dom forced his eyes open. A woman was kneeling beside him, brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, nurse's uniform stained with coffee, eyes wide with shock looking at him. Boy, can you hear me? He tried to speak, but only a moan came out. It's okay, I'll help. I'll call an ambulance. No, the word came out hoarse, desperate. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength for someone dying. No, police, please. She hesitated, and he saw the conflict on her face. Because she was good, he could see that, and good people called for help. Good people did the right thing. They'll kill me, he whispered, and tears started falling involuntarily. Please, don't turn me in. Please. Maggie Mitchell looked at that bloodied boy, saw the genuine terror in his eyes, the bullet in his back, the old abuse marks on his exposed arms, and made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. My car is over there, she said firmly, already removing her jacket to press against the wound. Can you make it there? Dominic telling me this story with a monotone voice, like he was reading a report, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands closed into fists. She took me to your house, he continued, put me in the kitchen, used tools she had, removed the bullet without anesthesia while I bit down on a towel so I wouldn't scream and wake you up. My hand flew to my mouth. Dom, it hurt a lot, he said, and a bitter smile appeared, but she stayed with me all night, holding my hand, saying everything was going to be okay, that she wouldn't let me die. 3 months later, Dominic was lying on the living room couch, watching TV quietly so he wouldn't wake Avery, who had fallen asleep on his chest, her blonde curls tickling his chin. 3 months. He had stayed 3 months with Maggie and her daughter, hidden from the world, healing slowly, and for the first time in his life he understood what it felt like to be safe. You're too good for this world, he said quietly. When Maggie came into the room bringing hot tea, she smiled, that gentle smile that made his chest tighten, in a way he didn't understand. And you deserve good things too, Dominic. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. But he knew the truth. He knew he needed to go back, because if he didn't go back, if his uncle found out where he was, Maggie and Avery would pay the price. I'll protect you, he promised, stroking the sleeping child's hair. Always. No matter what happens, you two will always be safe. I promise. I went back to my uncle the next week, Dominic told me, his eyes fixed on the box of photos. I needed to survive, needed to get strong enough to make sure you were never touched, but I kept in touch. Money appeared when your mother needed it, always anonymous. Always enough. Birthday presents. Quick visits when it was safe. He picked up a photo from the box, the one where he was holding baby me. You grew up not knowing that Uncle Dom was actually the head of the organization that controlled half the city. Your mother protected me, and I protected you. It worked, until you grew up. 8 years ago, Avery was 16, and was asking about Uncle Dom again, like she always did when he visited, wanting to know more about his life, why he didn't visit more, why he always seemed so distant. Maggie waited for him to leave, and then sat her daughter down in the kitchen with that serious expression that meant important conversation. He's a good man in a bad world, Maggie began. But? Avery asked. Because there was always a but. But that world kills, Avery. I don't want you near it. You understand? What he does, the people he knows, the constant danger. He wouldn't hurt me. No, Maggie agreed firmly. He'd cut off his own arm before letting anyone hurt you. But his world would hurt you. His enemies, his rivals, anyone who wanted to get to him. She took her daughter's hands. That's why, Avery. He's family. Always will be. But you keep your distance. Promise me. Avery had promised. Not fully understanding, but trusting her mother. The next week, Maggie called Dominic to talk. I saw how you look at her, she said bluntly. Dom froze. Maggie, she's my daughter, Dominic. My girl. Her voice was firm, but not cruel. And that doesn't change the fact that she's off limits. I know, he said quietly. She deserves better than this, Maggie continued. She deserves someone who doesn't carry blood on their hands. Someone who can give her a normal, safe life. You deserve that too, Maggie added, and there was genuine kindness in her voice. Too late for me, Dom replied, and there was such certainty in his voice. Not for her. So they agreed. Sporadic visits. Generous birthday presents, but always distance. And it worked for 8 years, Dominic said, bringing me back to the present. I convinced myself I could see you as a niece. I ignored every time my heart raced when you smiled. I pretended not to notice how you'd grown, how beautiful, smart, amazing you'd become. He stood up, started pacing. But then you showed up here, in my house, wearing my shirt, and I saw you that morning, and all those promises, all that self-control just evaporated. My heart was beating so fast I was sure he could hear it. Maggie trusts me, he continued, more to himself than to me. She saved me, gave me family, made me believe I deserved kindness, and I repaid that debt by keeping you away, keeping you safe. But now you're here and I can't unsee. I can't pretend you're a child. I can't ignore what I feel. He stopped in front of me, so close I had to tilt my head back to look into his eyes. So tell me, Avery, what do I do? How do I honor the woman who saved me, and at the same time deal with the fact that I want her daughter in a way that should condemn me? I didn't have an answer, because part of me still insisted, he's Uncle Dom, just uncle, trying to convince myself this was just embarrassment, just forced proximity, something that would pass. But my body reacted differently. My heart raced when he entered a room. My skin tingled when he passed by. My thoughts went to places that definitely weren't appropriate for a niece thinking about her uncle. It's just embarrassment, I whispered, more to myself than to him. It'll pass. But even saying it, I knew the truth. It wouldn't pass. And by the way he looked at me, with that desire mixed with guilt and frustration, he knew it too. We were in trouble. Serious trouble. Chapter 3. Forced Proximity.
Now, I'm ready.
The first week as a housekeeper in Dominic Kane's mansion was strange, in a way I couldn't fully explain. I did my job impeccably, cleaning every room until it shined, organizing everything with the precision of someone who really needed those $8,000. But the whole time there was this strange energy in the air. We avoided each other, like actively avoided each other. If I heard his footsteps in the hallway, I'd go to the opposite side of the house. If he came into the kitchen to get coffee, I'd find an excuse to leave. It was uncomfortable and ridiculous, but necessary, because after that conversation, after knowing the full story, after understanding exactly why this was so forbidden, being near him felt too dangerous. Not dangerous like he was going to hurt me, but dangerous like I might do something stupid, like admit I couldn't stop thinking about him, or worse, that my heart raced every time I heard his voice. So distance was better, safer, until it was no longer possible. It was a Thursday night when everything changed. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, something simple because Dom rarely ate at home, when I heard the front door slam hard. It wasn't the normal sound of someone arriving. It was violent, urgent. My heart immediately took off and I dropped the knife I was using, wiped my hands on my apron and ran to the entrance hall, and froze. Dominic was leaning against the wall. His impeccable suit was torn in some places. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. And the way he was holding his back, bent slightly forward, made something tighten in my chest. Dom! I ran to him without thinking, my hands automatically going to his arms. What happened? Are you okay? I am, he said, but his voice came out tense, too controlled, like each word cost effort. Just a meeting that got complicated. Julian appeared behind him, looking equally tired, but less injured. I'll call Dr. Chen. Don't need to. Dom started. Yes, you do. I cut him off, surprising us both with the firmness in my voice. You can barely walk straight. Come on, I'll help you get to your room. I expected resistance, but he just sighed and let me drape his arm over my shoulders, supporting part of his weight as we walked slowly down the hallway. He was heavy, pure muscle and height, and each step seemed to cause pain. I could feel it from the small sounds he tried to stifle. When we finally made it to his room, he practically collapsed on the bed, and I saw the way his face contorted in pain when his back touched the mattress. Lie on your side, I instructed, and it was my professional voice now, the physical therapy student speaking. It'll hurt less. He obeyed, and I found myself wanting to touch, check the extent of the damage, but held back because it wasn't my place. Not yet. Dr. Chen arrived 20 minutes later, a short Asian man with glasses and a serious expression, and politely asked me to leave while he examined Dom. I waited in the hallway, pacing back and forth, biting my nail, trying not to think about all the bad things that could be happening in there. Finally, the door opened and Dr. Chen came out, putting instruments away in his bag. "How is he?" I asked immediately. "He'll survive," he said with a tired smile, "but his back is very bad. The old injury flared up with today's trauma, and if he doesn't treat it properly, he could have permanent damage." My stomach tightened. "What does he need to do?" "Physical therapy. Urgent. At least 3 sessions a week. Maybe more." He looked at me then, like he was evaluating me. "Julian mentioned you're a physical therapy student. Last semester." I nodded, confused about where this was going. "Would you trust your skills to treat him?" 20 minutes later, I was back in the kitchen, finishing dinner mechanically, when Julian appeared. "Boss wants to talk to you," he said, and there was something in his tone, something amused. I found Dominic still in his room, now sitting on the edge of the bed, fresh shirt, but still visibly uncomfortable. "Avery," he began, and it was strange to see him like this, almost shy. "I need a favor." I crossed my arms, trying to look more confident than I felt. "You're back?" "Yes," Dr. Chen said. "Physical therapy. You would need the clinical hours to graduate, right?" Oh no. "I do," I admitted slowly. "But Dom, you're you. And you're a professional," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Right?" "Completely," I lied, feeling my heart race just thinking about touching him, having my hands on that body I'd briefly seen that first morning. "Then help us both." I should have said no, should have made up some excuse, kept that safe distance we had built. But I looked at him, saw the pain he was trying to hide, remembered the story he'd told me, the bullet that still carried consequences after all these years. "Okay," I finally said, "but you follow my instructions, completely. No arguing." A small smile appeared on his face, the first since he'd arrived injured. "Yes, doctor." The next day, Julian showed me a room I didn't even know existed in the mansion. It was a complete therapy room, with a professional massage table, expensive equipment I'd only seen in photos of luxury clinics, and even a shelf with therapeutic oils and lotions perfectly organized. "He has a private physical therapy room?" I asked, impressed. "Boss prepares for everything," Julian simply replied. Dominic arrived a few minutes later, still moving slowly, wearing black sweatpants and a simple white t-shirt. Seeing him like that, casual, was somehow worse than the suit. More real, more man, and less the dangerous boss I could keep at a distance in my head. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I thought. Out loud I said, "Lie on the table, face down first." He approached the table, hesitated, and then looked at me. "Do I need to take off my shirt?" "Yes," I said, trying to sound professional, and not like a 24-year-old girl about to see the man she secretly wanted half naked. "I need full access to your back." I saw him swallow hard, and then he pulled the shirt over his head in one motion. My God, I had seen him briefly that first morning, but this was different. He was facing me, under the bright light of the therapy room, and I could see every detail. Defined muscles that spoke of hours of training, scars that told stories I probably didn't want to know, tattoos that spread across his right shoulder and down his arm, and his back, when he turned around, showed the worst scar of all, round and ugly, a permanent mark from that bullet from 22 years ago. "Lie down," I instructed, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. He obeyed, positioning himself face down on the table, arms at his sides, face turned to the side where I was standing. I took a deep breath, washed my hands in the sink in the corner, and approached him with therapeutic oil warmed between my palms. "It might hurt a little at first," I warned. "Let me know if it becomes unbearable. Do what you need to," he replied, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. I placed my hands on his back, and the contact was electric. Warm skin under my palms, muscles tense as stone, and I felt him shiver slightly at the touch. "Relax," I instructed, trying to focus on the work and not on how intimate it was to have my hands on him like this. "Trying," he murmured, and there was something in his voice that made my stomach tighten. I started working, looking for muscle knots, applying pressure where needed, and it was hard, very hard to keep my mind professional when every touch seemed to mean more than it should. "Here," I said, pressing a particularly tense spot near the scar, "and here." I increased the pressure, using the technique I'd learned in college, and suddenly Dom let out a sound, something between a moan and a sigh, and we both froze. "Sorry," I said quickly. Too quickly. "Did it hurt?" "No," he replied, his voice rougher than before. "Keep going," I continued. But now there was a different tension in the air, something that went beyond therapy, something that made every breath seem heavier, every touch more significant. 45 minutes that felt like 45 hours of sweet torture, my hands learning every inch of his back, feeling the muscles begin to relax under my touch, our breathing synchronizing without us realizing it. When I finally finished, I cleaned my hands and took a step back, trying to regain some composure. "Better?" I asked. He sat up slowly, rolling his shoulders, and a genuine smile appeared on his face. "Much. Your hands are magic." I blushed, hating how he could affect me with simple phrases. "Same time tomorrow?" "Yes." And so began our new routine. Mornings I was the housekeeper, cleaning and organizing. Afternoons, I was the physical therapist, with my hands on him, touching, pressing, healing. Nights we avoided each other, each trying not to think about the day, but the days passed, and the tension only grew. During the sessions, we talked. She about college, about her dreams of opening her own clinic, about how she wanted to help people. He about vague things, never work details, but about books he liked, places he'd visited, childhood memories before everything got complicated. And they were real, vulnerable, the kind of conversation that made my heart dangerously approach forbidden territory. On the 5th session, while I worked on a particularly stubborn knot, he said quietly, "You're the only person I let touch me like this." My hands paused. "What?" "I don't trust easily. I don't let people close. But with you," he turned his head to look at me, "with you, it's different." And in that moment, with my hands still on his back, our eyes locked, I knew we were in trouble, because the distance we'd tried to maintain was disappearing, one therapeutic touch at a time. Chapter 4, Chemistry Undeniable.
You were always protected.
The second week of sessions started with a lie we both pretended to believe. "How's your back?" I asked on Monday morning, when he showed up at the therapy room at the scheduled time. "Better," he admitted, rolling his shoulders to demonstrate. "Much better, actually. You're good at what you do." I should have said then we didn't need to continue. Should have suggested he was healed enough, that daily sessions were no longer necessary, but I didn't. "Prevention is important," I said instead, avoiding his gaze while I prepared the table. "Especially with chronic injury like yours. Better to continue until we're sure it won't flare up again." "Makes sense," he agreed too quickly, and when our eyes met, there was a silent understanding there. We both knew he didn't need daily sessions anymore, and we were both going to keep pretending he did. The first incident happened on Tuesday. I was explaining to him about the importance of stretching, how tight muscles in the legs could affect posture and consequently the back. "So I need to stretch more?" he asked, already lying face down on the table. "Yes, actually, let me work on your legs today. It'll help." He turned onto his back, looking at me with an expression I couldn't fully decipher. "Okay." I started with his feet, working the calf muscles, slowly moving up his thighs, and that's when I realized the problem. To stretch properly, I needed to position his legs in ways that were, well, suggestive was a polite word to describe it. "Bend your knee," I instructed, trying to keep my voice professional. "I need to stretch the hip flexors." He obeyed, and suddenly I was between his legs, my hands on his thigh, gently pushing to create the proper stretch, and the proximity was absurd. I could feel his heat, see how his abdominal muscles contracted with the stretch, and when I looked up, he was watching me with that intensity that made my stomach tie in knots. "Is this," his voice came out hoarse, tense, "necessary?" I swallowed hard, feeling my face heat up, completely. Our eyes locked, and for 1 second, 2, 3, neither of us moved. The room seemed to have gotten smaller, the air heavier, and I was acutely aware of every inch of skin where my hands touched him. Then I forced my eyes away, finished the stretch mechanically, and practically ran to wash my hands when it was over. The second incident was 2 days later, and this time, it was his fault. I was putting away the equipment after his session when I felt a sharp twinge in my shoulder, result of having carried heavy groceries the day before. I grimaced, rolling my shoulder trying to relieve the tension. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. Dom was watching me from the table where he was still sitting. "It's nothing," I said quickly. "Just a tight muscle. Come here." It wasn't a request. It was an order, said in that tone he used when he didn't expect to be contradicted. And like the idiot I was, I obeyed. He got up from the table, pointed to the chair. "Sit, Dom. You don't need to. Sit, Avery." I sat, and then I felt his hands on my shoulders, large, warm, surprisingly gentle considering these same hands probably did terrible things at his job. He started massaging, finding the muscle knot with impressive precision, applying exactly the right pressure. A sigh escaped my lips before I could control it. "Where did you learn this?" I asked, closing my eyes because it was easier than looking at him, and my voice came out half dreamy, half melted. "Watching you," he replied, low, too close to my ear, and the tone was so intense it made every nerve ending in my body wake up. His fingers worked the muscles with skill that shouldn't be possible for someone who had only learned by watching, but I couldn't complain, not when I was melting under his touch. I tilted my head forward, giving more access, and I heard his breathing fail for a second. Then his hands stopped abruptly, and when I opened my eyes, he was already on the other side of the room, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "Better?" he asked, not looking at me. "Yes," I whispered. "Thank you." He just nodded and left the room without looking back. The third incident happened on Friday, and it was the worst of all, or the best, depending on your point of view. I was demonstrating a balance exercise for him, something that would help strengthen his core and protect his back. "It's like this," I said, standing on one leg, arms extended. "Hold for 30 seconds, then switch." I was so focused on demonstrating correctly that I didn't notice the small puddle of water on the floor, result of having knocked over the spray bottle earlier. My foot slipped. It happened fast. That horrible feeling of losing balance, of knowing you're going to fall and having no way to avoid it. But I never touched the floor. Strong arms caught me, pulled me against a solid chest, and suddenly I was in his arms, being held like I weighed nothing. Our faces were inches apart, maybe less. I could see the golden flecks in his dark eyes, count every eyelash, feel his breath mixing with mine. "I got you," he whispered, and his voice was so hoarse, so loaded with meaning. "You always do," I replied without thinking, and it came out with double meaning that neither of us could ignore. Time stopped, literally stopped, because nothing else existed beyond his arms holding me, his eyes on mine, the heat between our bodies. He was lowering me slowly, so slowly that every millimeter seemed intentional, and I saw his eyes fall to my lips, saw the way his jaw tensed. I tilted my face up, just a little, almost without realizing it, and he lowered his, just a fraction. "Boss?" We both jumped at Julian's voice coming from the door. Dominic released me so fast I almost fell again, and when I looked at the door, Julian was standing there with an expression that was pure, contained amusement. "What?" Dom asked, and there was clear irritation in his voice. "Important call. Can't wait." Dom ran his hand over his face, took a deep breath, and left the room without looking at me. Julian gave me a small smile before following the boss, and I stood there alone, heart racing, legs trembling, trying to process what had almost happened. That night, the last session of the day, was different. Dominic arrived later than normal, already dark outside, and there was a quietness in him I wasn't used to. "Lie down," I said softly, and he obeyed without the usual sarcastic comment. I worked in silence for a few minutes, feeling his muscles gradually relax under my hands. "Why physical therapy?" he asked suddenly, his voice half muffled by the fact that his face was turned to the side. "I want to help people," I replied honestly. "Heal, like your mother." "Yes, I paused, thinking, she sees good in people, even when they don't deserve it. "I deserved it," he said quietly, so quietly I almost didn't hear. My hands paused on his back. "You deserve happiness, Uncle Dom." He turned so fast I took a step back, surprised. He was sitting now, staring at me with an intensity that made my heart take off. "Don't call me that," he said, and there was something almost desperate in his voice. "What, Uncle? Don't when we're like this." "Like what?" I whispered. Alone, the air left my lungs. We stood there, looking at each other, and so many unspoken things passed between us, it was almost physical. "You know what I do," he finally said, breaking the silence. "I do," I replied, and it was true. I'd always known, even as a child, even when I pretended not to know. "Doesn't it scare you?" I should say yes. It should be the sensible, safe answer. But I looked at him, at this man who had been shot at 12, who had been saved by my mother, who carried scars inside and out. "Do you scare me?" I asked instead of answering. "Never." "Then no." The simplicity of my answer seemed to completely disarm him. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, there was something vulnerable there that made my chest ache. Later that night, Dominic was in his office, pretending to review documents, but actually staring at nothing. Julian entered without knocking, as he always did. "Boss, you're different." Dom didn't look up. "How?" "Lighter. She's good for you." "She's off limits," Dom said automatically, but without conviction. "Maggie made a rule," Julian agreed, sitting in the chair across from him. "You agreed. But Avery's an adult, Dom. She can make her own decisions. She's Maggie's daughter. She's a woman you want. Admit it." Silence. Long, heavy, full of unspoken truths. "I can't," Dom finally said. "But you want to." Pause. Then quietly, almost inaudible. "Yes." Julian stood up, put his hand on his boss's shoulder. "One day you're going to have to choose between the promise you made and the happiness you deserve. And honestly, I think Maggie would want you to choose happiness." He left, leaving Dominic alone with thoughts he could no longer ignore. Chapter 5. Breaking Point.
Good to see you, Kane. And you.
3 full weeks inside Dominic Kane's mansion, and I was losing my sanity bit by bit. The routine had become delicious torture. That kind of suffering you sort of don't want to end even knowing it should end. Every afternoon I put my hands on him, felt his muscles relax under my touch, heard the small sounds he made when I hit a particularly tense spot. Every night I went to my room and lay awake, remembering every detail, the way he looked at me, the heat of his skin, how my heart raced every time he said my name. And during the day, when we weren't in the therapy room, there were prolonged glances across the room, accidental bumps in the hallway that seemed to last too long, conversations that started about silly things and ended in vulnerable confessions about fears and dreams. We were both denying the obvious with a determination that bordered on ridiculous, but I couldn't pretend anymore, not alone at least. "Lila, I need to talk to you," I said into the phone on a Thursday afternoon, locked in my room while Dom was in his office. "Finally," my best friend responded. "You disappeared for 3 weeks. I thought you'd died or run off to Mexico. Worse, I said, throwing myself on the mattress. I think I'm in love with Uncle Dom. Silence on the other end. Then, Uncle? You. Avery, that's gross. He's not a blood uncle, I said quickly, feeling my face heat up, even though she couldn't see. He's my mom's friend. We always called him Uncle because it was easier to explain when I was a kid. Oh, her voice changed completely. So, what's the problem exactly? What's the problem? I repeated, incredulous. Lila, he's head of the organization. Like actual criminal, and my mom's going to kill me. Literally kill me if she finds out. But do you love him? She asked, straight to the point as always. I closed my eyes, felt the tightness in my chest that came whenever I thought about him. I think so. So, what's really the problem? Besides your mom and the fact that he's a criminal, do you want him? I do, I admitted out loud for the first time. I want him so much it hurts, Lila. But it's too complicated, too impossible. Or, she said thoughtfully, maybe you're just afraid to admit what you really want. That night I couldn't sleep properly, tossing and turning, thinking about Lila's words, when I heard noise coming from downstairs. It wasn't the normal sound of the house. It was violent, urgent, and my heart immediately took off. I jumped out of bed, didn't even bother putting something over the shorts and t-shirt I wore to sleep, and ran down the stairs, and stopped halfway, hand flying to my mouth, horror piercing through me. Dominic was in the entrance hall, leaning against the wall, and there was blood, a lot of blood, on his white shirt, running from the cut above his eyebrow, staining the hand he was pressing against his ribs. Dom! I screamed, and didn't even register that it was the first time I'd said his name without the uncle in front. I ran the rest of the stairs, almost tripped on the last step in my rush to get to him. I'm fine, he said, but his voice came out tense, too controlled, and he couldn't even stand completely upright. You're not! I practically screamed, tears already burning my eyes, hands shaking as I tried to see the extent of the damage. What happened? Who did this? Meeting that got complicated. He tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace of pain. Rival thought he could eliminate me. He was wrong. Julian appeared behind him, also injured but able to walk better. Boss, you need a doctor. No, Dom cut him off. Nothing serious. Just need to clean up. I'll clean you up, I said firmly, already draping his arm over my shoulders. Come on, bathroom, now. I expected him to argue, but he just nodded, letting me guide him down the hallway to the nearest bathroom. He sat on the edge of the bathtub, still holding his ribs, and I locked the door before starting to grab clean towels, warm water, first aid kit. My hands were still shaking, adrenaline and fear and something more intense running through my veins. Take off your shirt, I instructed, and it wasn't a request. He obeyed, pulling the stained shirt over his head with a groan of pain, and that's when I saw the bruise on his ribs, purple and ugly, but at least not bleeding. The cut on his eyebrow was worse, still bleeding, so I started there. I positioned myself between his legs, grabbed a wet towel, and started cleaning the blood from his face carefully, trying not to hurt him more. We were so close, intimate in a way that went beyond therapy, beyond any professional excuse I could invent. Him sitting, me standing between his legs, leaning over him, so close our faces were inches apart. You scared me, I admitted quietly while cleaning the blood from his neck. When I saw you like this, Sorry, he said, and it was genuine. Didn't want to worry you. You can't die, understand? My voice came out louder, more desperate. You can't just die and leave me. He grabbed my wrist, gentle but firm, stopping my movement. Why? And there was something in his voice, something testing, provoking, asking me to admit what we both already knew. Because the words stuck in my throat when I realized what I was about to say. Our eyes met, and the way he looked at me, it was different from all the other times. More intense, more raw, more desperate. Say it, he asked, his voice hoarse and low. Avery, please, just say it. I can't, I whispered, tears finally escaping. Why not? Because you're you, and I'm me, and my mother. Forget your mother. He cut me off, the hand that was on my wrist moving to my face, fingers cleaning the tears. Forget everything. Forget the rules, the promises, what should or shouldn't be. Tell me what you want. And something broke inside me. All the barriers I had built, all the excuses, all the self-control simply crumbled. You, I said, tears flowing freely now. I want you. I always wanted you. It happened so fast I didn't even have time to process. He pulled, hands on my waist bringing me closer, and then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was desperate, years of tension and repressed desire exploding at once, and I responded with equal intensity, my hands flying to his hair, pulling, needing him closer, even though we were already so close. He deepened the kiss, tongue asking for entrance that I gave without hesitation, and his taste was better than any fantasy I had allowed myself to have. His hands squeezed my waist, pulling me until I was practically sitting on his lap, and he moaned against my mouth, a low and rough sound that made my entire body ignite. I was lost in him, in the heat, the taste, the sensation of his hands on my body, his muscles tense under my palms. My fingers traced his shoulders, down his chest, feeling his racing heart under my hand, and he kissed me like I was air, and he was suffocating. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't soft. It was raw hunger and desire that had been denied too long finally released. He pulled my bottom lip between his teeth, gentle but possessive, and I arched against him, wanting more, needing more. His hands moved up my back, one burying itself in my hair, tilting my head to the angle he wanted, and the kiss became even deeper, more intense, more impossible to stop. I was melting, burning, feeling everything and nothing at the same time. And then my phone rang. The loud and intrusive sound cut through the fog of desire, and we both froze, heavy breaths mixing, lips still touching. I pulled away just enough to see the screen of the phone I'd left on the sink. Mom flashed on the screen, large and accusatory. Reality hit like a brick to the face. What was I doing? What were we doing? No, I said, more to myself than to him, suddenly pulling away. No, I can't. We can't. Avery, he started, reaching out his hand. Sorry, I said, already running to the door. I can't. Sorry. And I ran. Literally ran from the bathroom, from the hallway, stumbled up the stairs, locked myself in my room and slid to the floor, heart beating so hard it hurt. My fingers went to my lips, still tasting him, still feeling his heat, and part of me wanted to run back, wanted to finish what we had started. But another part, the rational part, knew I had crossed a line there was no coming back from. I had kissed Dominic Kane, had admitted I wanted him, had let years of control and reason evaporate in seconds, and by the way he had kissed me back, by the desperation and desire I had felt in him, he wanted me just as much. But wanting wasn't enough, not when there were broken promises, betrayed loyalties, a mother who would never understand. I picked up the phone with trembling hands. 5 missed calls from my mother. Downstairs, Dominic was still sitting on the bathtub, fingers on his lips, breathing hard. Julian appeared in the doorway, looked at the scene, and wisely said nothing. Dom stood up abruptly, went to the wall, and punched it, hard. The plaster cracked under his knuckles, pain exploding in his hand, but he barely registered it. Damn it, he let out. Frustration and desire and regret mixed together. But even with all that, even knowing he had just complicated everything impossible times 1,000, he didn't regret it. He didn't regret the kiss, her taste, the way she had melted against him. He had waited 22 years for that moment, and now that he had tasted it, now that he knew what it was like to kiss Avery Mitchell, what it was like to have her in his arms, feel her wanting him as much as he wanted her, there was no going back. Not for him. Not anymore. Chapter 6. Aftermath.
It wasn't a mistake.
I woke up the next day with swollen eyes from crying so much, and an iron determination to avoid Dominic Kane for the rest of my existence, or at least until I could look at him without remembering the taste of his lips, the heat of his hands on my waist, the way he had moaned against my mouth like I was the only thing that mattered in the world. I got up at 5 in the morning, 2 hours earlier than normal, and started my housekeeper work with an obsessive dedication that probably wasn't healthy. I cleaned the kitchen until it shined, organized the living room, wiped down every surface like my life depended on it, all at record speed, because I needed to get out of there before he woke up, before having to face those dark eyes and explain why I had run, why I had kissed him like I was dying of thirst, and he was water, and then run off like a scared child. When I finished, it was past 7, and I heard movement upstairs, the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. I panicked. I grabbed paper and pen from the kitchen drawer, scribbled a quick note, left it on top of the counter where he would certainly see it, and practically ran to my room, locking the door behind me. The note simply said, "Your back improved. No more sessions needed." A lie so obvious even a child would see through it, but it was the best I could do with my heart beating out of control and my hands shaking. Dominic found the note 20 minutes later, when he came down looking for her, already knowing she'd be hiding. He read it once, twice, 3 times. He crumpled the paper in his hand, jaw tensing, and then forced himself to take a deep breath, releasing it slowly. She was running. Of course she was running. He had broken all the rules, crossed all the lines, and now she was terrified of what that meant. He should go to her, break down that stupid door, force a conversation. But he didn't, because if Avery needed space, if she needed time to process what had happened, then he'd give that to her, even if it hurt, even if every fiber of his being screamed to go to her, pull her into his arms again, prove that wasn't a mistake. so he let it be, respected her space. But it hurt more than any physical injury he'd ever suffered. 2 days passed in tense silence. I only saw Dominic in glimpses, always from afar, always running before he could approach. I did my work when he wasn't around, left food ready and disappeared, basically lived locked in my room when I had no choice. And the whole time, my head was complete chaos of contradictory thoughts. I kissed him. I whispered to my pillow on the second night, still tasting him on my lips. I kissed Uncle Dom. What did I do? But another voice in my head, one that sounded annoyingly like Lila, answered, "He kissed you back, hard." That wasn't a confused person's kiss. "My mom's going to kill me," I moaned, turning on my side in bed. "She's literally going to murder me when she finds out." Or, the voice of reason continued, relentless. "Maybe she'll understand. Maybe she'll see that you're adults, that you chose each other." Impossible, I said out loud to the empty room. Completely impossible. But even saying it, even trying to convince myself I'd done the right thing by running, my body missed him in a way that bordered on physical, missing his touch, his voice, how he looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous at the same time. I was a complete mess. Dominic was in his office on the afternoon of the second day, pretending to work, but actually staring at the same contract page for 40 minutes. Julian entered without knocking, as always, and threw himself in the chair across from the desk. "Are you going to talk to her?" he asked bluntly. "She needs to process," Dom replied, still looking at the paper. "Boss," Julian leaned forward, "you've been processing for 3 weeks. Since she got here, you've been doing this. I can't. I shouldn't. It's a forbidden thing, but clearly you can, and did, and she returned it. She ran because she's scared, not because she doesn't want to." Dom finally looked at his assistant, and there was so much frustration on his face. "What if I hurt her? What if you're happy?" Julian shot back. "Have you thought about that? What if instead of martyring yourself and following rules someone else made, you simply let you two be happy? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple." Julian cut him off. "You want her. She wants you. You're an adult. She's an adult. The only problem is you don't have the courage to admit you deserve this." Silence. Long and heavy. 3 weeks, boss. 3 weeks of you two dancing around each other. Obvious chemistry. Tension that everyone in this house feels. Time to act. On the night of the second day, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard firm knocks on the door. My heart immediately took off because I knew that rhythm, that intensity. "Avery!" Dominic's voice came from the other side. Firm but not threatening. "Open up." I stayed motionless, holding my breath. "No," I finally replied, my voice coming out smaller than intended. "I'll break it down." "You will not." The sound of a key turning in the lock made me jump up in bed, eyes wide. The door opened and there he was, master key in hand, determined expression on his face. "You had a key this whole time?" I asked, indignant. "It's my house," he said simply, entering and closing the door behind him. "Of course I have a master key." I jumped out of bed, crossed my arms, turned my back to him. "Get out." "No, Dominic, not until we talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said to the empty space in front of me. "It was a mistake. Done. Forget it." The silence that followed was so thick I almost turned to see if he was still there. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, but there was steel underneath. "It wasn't a mistake. It was—" "Look at me when you say that," he ordered, and it wasn't a request. I turned, ready to argue, but the words died when I saw the intensity in his gaze. "It was a mistake," I repeated, but without conviction now. "I'm what?" He cut me off, taking a step forward. "Your uncle? I never was, Avery. I was never really your uncle. Boss? Yes. Criminal? Also. But above all, I'm a man who wants you." My breathing failed. "Dumb. And you want me too," he continued, one more step closer. "Deny it. Look in my eyes and deny you want me." I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out because how could I deny what was too obvious? "I can't," I finally whispered, tears burning my eyes. "I can't deny it." Something in his face softened. Just a little, but enough for me to see. He moved then, not toward me but toward the window, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration I'd already learned meant he was fighting internally. "I tried," he admitted, his voice coming out tired. "Tried to see you as a niece, as off limits, as a line I don't cross." "And?" I asked quietly. "I failed," he said simply. Week 1, I'd already failed. When I saw you that morning, when you put your hands on me in the first session, when you showed up in my adult life, beautiful and smart, and so far from being a child, he turned to face me, and there was so much raw truth there. I failed at every attempt not to want you. "And my mother?" I asked, because I needed to know. "And the promise you made to her? Maggie made that rule to protect you," he said, approaching slowly. "I understand that. I understand she saw the world I live in and didn't want that for you. But you're an adult, Avery. You can make your own choices. And he stopped in front of me, so close I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "I protect you. From the world?" My voice came out shaky. "From the world," he confirmed. "From anyone who tries to hurt you. Even from myself if necessary." His hands came up, hesitant, before finally touching my face, fingers tracing my cheek, with a delicacy that contrasted absurdly with what I knew these hands were capable of doing. But I don't want to protect you from me, Avery. I want to protect you with me. I want to be the person who keeps you safe, who makes you laugh, who gives you everything you deserve. Tears were flowing freely now, and I didn't even try to stop them. What if I want you? I asked, voice breaking. Even knowing the risks? Even knowing my mother may never forgive? Even knowing your world is dangerous and complicated? He stopped breathing, literally stopped, chest frozen in the middle of an inhale, eyes wide staring at me. Are you sure? He finally asked, and there was so much hope and fear mixed in those two words. No, I admitted honestly. I'm not sure of anything, Dom. I'm terrified, confused. But I put my hand over his that was still on my face. I want you anyway. The smile that appeared on his face was transformative, rare and genuine, and so beautiful it made my heart skip. Then have me, he said simply, and kissed me. But this kiss was different from the first. It wasn't desperate or urgent. It was soft, careful, like he was memorizing every second, every sensation. His hands descended to my neck, thumb caressing my jaw, and he kissed me like I was something precious he was afraid to break. I melted against him, hands moving up his chest to his shoulders, and responded with everything I had. All the confusion and fear and desire transformed into that kiss. When we separated, heavy breaths, foreheads touching, he whispered, "Let's go slow." Slow, I agreed, because it made sense, because we had time. But together, he added, and it wasn't a question. Together, I confirmed. We stayed there longer, just holding each other, letting the reality of the decision take shape. My mom's going to freak out, I said against his chest. Probably, he agreed, fingers tracing circles on my back. And it's going to be complicated and dangerous. And we'll probably fight a lot because you're stubborn and controlling. And you're hard-headed and impulsive, he countered, but there was humor in his voice. I laughed, sound muffled against his shirt. This is a bad idea, isn't it? Probably the worst we've ever had, he agreed. But we're doing it anyway? He pulled me away just enough to look into my eyes, and there was so much certainty there. Absolutely. And in that moment, with him holding me like I was the most important thing in his world, I knew I had made my decision. It wasn't going to be easy. My mother would probably actually kill me. His world was dangerous in ways I couldn't even fully imagine. And we were both complicated people with complicated histories. But he was Dominic Kane, the boy my mother had saved. The man who had grown up carrying scars, but never losing the ability to be loyal, to protect, to care. And I was Avery Mitchell, Maggie's daughter, physical therapist in training. The girl who had grown up not knowing the mysterious uncle was actually the man who would one day turn my world upside down. Together didn't make sense on paper, but together, there in that room, in each other's arms, made all the sense in the world. So, I said, smiling against his lips. Boyfriend? He laughed, low and rough sound. If you can handle it. I'll handle it if you handle it. Deal. And we kissed again, sealing the most impossible and perfect agreement either of us could have imagined. Together now. Finally, together. Even though we still had to tell Maggie. But that was a problem for another day. Chapter 7. Secret and Sweet.
You're mine.
The first weeks after finally admitting what we felt were the strangest and most wonderful of my life. Officially, I was still Dominic Kane's housekeeper and physical therapist, keeping up appearances, doing my job as always. Secretly, we were a couple, hiding stolen kisses, loaded glances, touches that lasted longer than necessary, all while Julian pretended not to notice, and the rest of the world remained oblivious. It was exciting in an adolescent and ridiculous way, like we were doing something forbidden, which technically we were considering my mother didn't know, and would probably have a heart attack if she found out. But it was ours. This secret and sweet time was completely ours. The first time I woke up with Dominic kissing me was 3 days after making it official. I was dreaming about something I couldn't remember anymore when I felt soft lips on my neck, moving up my jaw until they finally found my mouth. I opened my eyes slowly, still half lost between sleep and reality, and there he was, propped up on an elbow beside my bed, already dressed for work, but with that small smile he reserved just for me. "Good morning, physical therapist," he murmured against my lips. I smiled, stretching my arms up before wrapping an arm around his neck. "I'm still a housekeeper too, remember? Then serve me coffee," he said, teasing, that dry humor appearing. I grabbed the nearest pillow and threw it in his face. "Serve yourself." He caught the pillow in the air, laughing, that low and genuine laugh I was addicted to provoking. "Violence so early? What an example for your client." "Client," I repeated with disdain, sitting up in bed. "You're not a client. You're what exactly?" He leaned in, kissed me slowly, deep, until my toes curled. "Yours," he said simply when he pulled away. "I'm yours." And my heart did that stupid thing of melting completely. The physical therapy sessions had taken a completely unprofessional turn, and I didn't care one bit. "Lie down," I instructed on a Thursday afternoon, trying to sound serious. Dom obeyed, lying face down on the table, but there was a smile at the corner of his mouth that told me he knew exactly what he was doing. I started working on his back, applying pressure in the right spots, actually trying to do my job. It lasted about 5 minutes. Then I felt large hands grab my waist, pulling me forward, and suddenly I was leaning over him, faces inches apart. "Dom," I warned, but without real conviction. "Your session." "Later," he murmured, turning onto his back on the table and pulling me to sit on his lap. "This first." And he kissed me, deep and slow, hands moving up my back while I melted against him. "This isn't therapeutic." I laughed against his lips when we stopped to breathe. "I disagree," he said, kissing my neck. That specific spot he'd discovered made me shiver. "Very therapeutic." I tried to protest more, really tried, but then his hands were in my hair and his mouth was on mine again, and rational thought simply evaporated. That day's session took twice the normal time. Discovering that Dominic Kane knew how to cook was a revelation I was still processing. It was a Friday night. I was finishing cleaning the living room when the smell of something delicious came from the kitchen. I went to investigate and found Dom, in sweatpants and a simple t-shirt, in front of the stove, stirring something that looked and smelled incredibly good. "You know how to cook?" I asked, shocked. He looked over his shoulder, amused. "You seem very surprised by that." "Because I am," I approached, peeked into the pan. "Risotto." He was making risotto from scratch. "Where did you learn?" "Maggie," he said simply, going back to stirring with concentration. "When I stayed with you, she insisted I needed to know how to take care of myself, so she taught me the basics." Something warm and sweet spread through my chest. "My mom taught you to cook." "Among other things," he agreed, tasting with a spoon before adding more seasoning. "She said a man who doesn't know how to cook is a man who hasn't learned to be independent." I leaned against the counter, watching him work, and there was something deeply intimate about it, about this shared memory of my mother. "She loved you," I said quietly. "Loves you, like a son, even if she never said it in those words." He stopped stirring, looked at me, and there was so much emotion in his eyes. "I know, and I love her too. That's why it's so complicated." I went to him, wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, rested my cheek on his back. "We'll tell her. Soon. I promise." He intertwined his fingers with mine. "When you're ready." Julian catching us kissing became almost routine, and frankly, I thought he did it on purpose sometimes. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, Dom and I in the living room, me lying on the couch with my head in his lap, while he read some documents, fingers absently playing with my hair. It was domestic and perfect, and I was half asleep when I felt him lean down and kiss me. I responded automatically, pulling him closer, and the kiss was starting to heat up when I heard Julian's voice. "Boss." Oh, we didn't even fully separate. Dom just turned his head, still holding me, and said in that dry voice, "Knock on doors. House is yours." Julian responded, clearly amused. "Exactly," Dom countered. "That's why I don't need an audience." I hid my face in his chest, laughing, feeling him laugh too, vibration passing from his body to mine. Julian left shaking his head, still smiling. My motor coordination continued to be a disaster, and Dominic seemed to find this infinitely funny. I was walking down the hallway, distracted thinking about who knows what, when I tripped over my own foot. I didn't even see the floor approaching because strong arms caught me, like they always caught me, graceful as always, Dom said, that teasing tone he used when he was making fun of me. "Shut up," I said, but I was already smiling, already leaning in to kiss him. "Make me," he teased back, mischievous smile. So I did. Kissed him right there in the middle of the hallway, in his arms, and he responded laughing against my mouth. When we separated, he set me on my feet with exaggerated care. "Can you walk by yourself, or do I need to carry you? You're insufferable, but you love me anyway." And the worst part is, he was right. I loved him. Completely, irrevocably loved that impossible man. The first time I saw Dominic truly vulnerable was on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after we started dating. I had gone to sleep in my room, because we still maintained some appearance of separation, when I heard a sound coming from his room. It was 2 a.m. The house was dark and silent, but that sound, something between a moan and a muffled scream, made my heart tighten. I didn't think, just ran to his room, opened the door slowly. He was in bed, sheets tangled in his legs, sweat covering his body, and even asleep I could see the tension, the pain on his face. "No," he murmured, voice anguished. "Please, don't leave me." Nightmare. He was having a nightmare. I ran to the bed, sat beside him, put my hands on his face. Dom, wake up. It's me." He woke with a start, almost hit me in the reflex to defend himself. But then he saw me and froze. "Avery?" His voice came out hoarse, confused. "I've got you," I said immediately, pulling him into my arms. "I'm here. You're safe." He clung to me with a strength that bordered on desperate, face buried in my neck, breathing coming in irregular waves. I held him, stroked his hair, murmured words of comfort while he gradually calmed down. "Sorry," he said after a few minutes, voice still shaky. "Didn't mean to wake you." "Don't apologize," I replied firmly. "Never apologize for this." He pulled away just enough to look at me, and there was so much vulnerability in his eyes, so different from the controlled man the world saw. "You heal me," he admitted quietly, "in ways that go beyond my back. You make me feel human again." "It was literally my job," I said, trying to bring levity. "Healing people." He laughed, wet and broken but genuine sound. "Only you would make a joke at a time like this. It's a gift," I said, smiling, wiping away a tear that had escaped from him. We stayed there, tangled in each other, until he fell back asleep, this time peaceful, safe in my arms. And I knew, in that moment, that I was irrevocably in love, not just with the strong and dangerous man the world saw, but with the wounded boy who still lived inside him, with the vulnerable man he hid from everyone, except me, never from me. The contract month came to an end on a rainy Friday. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Dom appeared, still in a robe, hair messy from sleep, and stood watching me from the doorway. "Your contract's up," he said finally. I turned to him, mug in hand. "I know. You need to decide." "Decide what?" He approached, stood in front of me, hands on the counter, trapping me in the middle. "Whether you go back to your apartment, or if you stay." My heart beat faster. "Stay how?" He seemed to struggle to find words, and it was so rare to see Dominic Kane without words. "As mine? Your girlfriend?" I asked, even though I already knew we were that. "My everything," he corrected, intense. "My girlfriend. My best friend. My private physical therapist. My reason for waking up in the morning smiling like an idiot." Tears burned my eyes. "I thought you didn't smile." "I didn't," he agreed, wiping away a tear that escaped with his thumb. "Until you." "Dom, stay, Avery. Please, don't go back to the tiny apartment. Don't go back to being away from me. Stay here, with me. Let me take care of you the way you take care of me." I should have thought more, should have considered the implications, what it meant to officially live with him, how I'd explain it to my mother, but I looked at that man, at the way he looked at me like I was the most important thing in his universe, and only one answer was possible. "Yes," I said simply. "I'll stay." The smile that appeared on his face was dazzling, transformative, and he picked me up, spinning while I laughed. "Mine," he said against my lips before kissing me. "Completely mine, completely yours," I agreed. That night, lying in his bed, me in the safety of his arms, he spoke quietly in the dark. "We're going to have to tell Maggie." My stomach tightened. "I know. She's going to freak out. She'll probably disown me," I agreed, trying to joke, but it came out kind of shaky. "She won't," he said with certainty, "because she loves you too much for that, and because she's known me long enough to know I'd rather die than hurt you." "When?" I asked. "When you're ready." I snuggled closer against him. "Soon, I promise. Just a few more days of peace before the chaos." He kissed my forehead. "As many days as you want," but we both knew it couldn't last forever. Secrets never did, especially when they involved overprotective mothers and broken promises. For now, though, it was just us, Dominic and Avery, criminal and physical therapist, wounded man and woman who healed. Completely impossible on paper, perfectly right in practice. And as he held me safe in his arms, listening to the rain hit the window, I let myself surrender to that temporary happiness, because I knew, deep down, that the storm was coming. Maggie would find out. The truth always came to light, and when it did, it was going to be brutal. But for that night, for a few more days, it was just us, and that was enough. Chapter 8. Maggie finds out.
I choose her.
I should have known the happiness wouldn't last long. We should have told my mother weeks ago, as soon as we started, but it was so easy to postpone, pretend we had more time, live in that perfect bubble where only the two of us existed, until the bubble burst on a Saturday morning that started perfectly normal and ended in absolute chaos. I had woken up early, like always, but instead of going to my room to keep up appearances, I'd stayed in Dom's bed, tangled up with him, lazy and happy. He had left early for an important meeting, kissed me while I was still half asleep, whispered he'd be back soon, and I'd gone back to sleep for another hour. When I finally got up, I put on the first thing I found, which happened to be one of his dress shirts, too big, falling to mid-thigh, and went downstairs to make coffee. I was humming absently, completely relaxed, when I heard the front door open. My first thought was that Dom had come back early, so I didn't even turn around immediately, just kept making coffee with a goofy smile on my face. "Honey?" I froze, completely, totally froze. That voice, I knew that voice better than my own. I turned slowly, heart already sinking to my stomach, and there she was, Maggie Mitchell, my mother, standing in the middle of the kitchen with keys in hand, looking me up and down with an expression that went from confusion to understanding to horror at impressive speed. "Mom," I said, voice coming out small and guilty. What are you doing here?" But she wasn't listening, eyes fixed on the shirt I was wearing, shirt that was clearly not mine, masculine shirt, expensive, that smelled like Dominic's cologne. "What are you doing here?" she shot back, voice getting louder. "I thought your job ended 3 weeks ago." I swallowed hard, hands gripping the coffee mug like it was a lifeline. "I stayed." "Stayed?" she repeated, taking a step forward. "As a housekeeper?" Silence. Heavy. Accusatory. Impossible to break because anything I said now would be admission of guilt. And then I saw the exact moment she understood. The moment all the pieces fell into place, when the truth hit her like a brick to the face. "Avery Mitchell," she said, voice dangerously low. "You did not." "Mom, let me explain. You did not do what I think you did. You didn't. With him." And it was in this perfect nightmare moment that I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. My heart simply stopped. No, 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 no. Please, anything but this. But the universe was clearly mad at me because Dominic appeared in the kitchen doorway, shirtless, just sweatpants hanging low on his hips, hair completely messy from sleep. Clearly looking for me. "Avery, did you see my—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw my mother. The silence that followed was so thick I could cut it with a knife. "Maggie," Dom said, and I heard the exact moment he realized how bad this looked. Terrible. Catastrophic. "No!" my mother exploded, and I had never seen her like this. Voice coming out in a scream that made me take a step back. "You did not, Dominic Kane." What followed was the kind of confrontation I'd had nightmares about. "I trusted you!" Maggie shouted, advancing on Dom like she wanted to hit him. And honestly, she probably did. "I saved you, took you in, treated you like a son, and you, and I'm trustworthy," Dom said, and his voice was calm, controlled, but there was steel underneath. "Nothing changed about that, Maggie." "Everything changed," she gestured violently between us. "She's my daughter, Dominic, my daughter that you promised to keep safe, keep away from your world. She's an adult," he said firmly. "That you took advantage of," Maggie accused, tears starting to flow. "She was vulnerable, needed money, and you brought her to your house, to your territory. And he didn't," I exploded, unable to stay quiet anymore. I ran forward, positioned myself between them. "Mom, he didn't do any of that. It was my choice." My mother looked at me, and there was so much pain in her eyes my heart broke. "Avery, it was my choice," I repeated, voice firm now even with tears streaming. "My decision, my choice to be with him. You don't understand what he is." "I understand," I shouted back. "You think I don't know, that I didn't always know even as a child? Even when I pretended not to know, I know exactly what he does, Mom." "Then how can you?" "Because I love him." The words came out before I could think, loud and desperate and true. "I love him, Mom. I love him." Absolute silence. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, the first time I'd fully admitted it, without reservations, without fear. And by the way Dom breathed behind me, it was the first time he'd heard it too. Maggie was looking at me like she didn't recognize me, tears flowing freely now. "Avery, and he loves me," I continued, voice breaking. "He protects me, takes care of me, makes me happy in a way I didn't even know was possible. So yes, Mom, I chose him, and I'm going to keep choosing him." What happened next was tense and horrible and necessary. Maggie asked to speak with Dom alone, and I almost refused, afraid of what she'd say, what he'd hear, but he touched my shoulder gently. "It's okay, I need to do this." So I went upstairs, changed out of that damn shirt of his into my own clothes and paced back and forth, biting my nail, imagining the worst. Downstairs, in the closed office, the most important conversation of Dominic's life was happening. Dominic closed the office door, turned to face the woman who had saved him 22 years ago, and waited. "You promised me," Maggie began, voice trembling but controlled. "Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't remember the promise you made." "I remember," he said quietly. "I promised to protect her. I'm doing that. By bringing her into your life," Maggie exploded again, "into your world of violence and death, and by changing my life for her," he cut her off, firmly. Maggie stopped, literally stopped mid-movement, mouth still open, eyes wide. "What?" "I'm getting out, Maggie," he said, and there was so much certainty in his voice. "From crime, from everything. I've already started the transition. You're getting out, passing the empire to my successor, keeping only legal investments. Security consulting, nothing more." He approached her. For her, because she deserves a man, not a monster, and I deserve to try to be better. Fresh tears appeared in Maggie's eyes. Dominic, you saved me when I was 12, he continued, voice breaking a little. Pulled me out of that alley, removed that bullet, gave me a bed and food, and for the first time someone looked at me like I mattered. You always mattered. I know, he said, because you taught me that. You taught me I deserved more than violence and pain, that I could be better than my father, better than my uncle, better than any expectation they had for me. He wiped his own eyes impatiently, and then Avery showed up in my adult life, grown, beautiful, amazing, and she looks at me the way you used to look, like I'm a real man, and not just a pointed weapon. She makes me believe, Maggie, believe that I can change, that I can be someone worthy of her. So I'm changing. For her. For me. For the chance to have something real for the first time in my life. Maggie was crying openly now, hands covering her mouth. If I hurt her, Dom said quietly, I'll kill myself first. I swear to you, I'd rather die than let her suffer because of me. Dramatic, Maggie said, but there was wet humor there. Honest, he countered. And then, for the first time in 22 years, Maggie Mitchell smiled at Dominic Kane with something like reluctant approval. When the office door finally opened, I practically flew downstairs. My mother came out first, eyes red but face calmer, and then she saw me and opened her arms. I ran to her, threw myself into the hug, cried against her shoulder like a child. Are you sure? She asked quietly in my ear. Absolutely sure this is what you want? Absolutely, I replied without hesitation. It's going to be hard, honey. Dangerous. Even with him getting out, there'll always be people from his past. I know. It's worth it. She pulled me away, held my face, looked into my eyes. He's really getting out? From crime? He is, I confirmed. For me, he's changing everything for me. Something changed in her face then. Acceptance. Reluctant. Cautious, but real. Then, she said slowly, maybe he deserves a chance. Mom, but, she cut me off, voice firm. The first time he hurts you, puts you in danger, makes you cry, I'll end him. Understood? I laughed through tears. Understood. She pulled me into another hug, and then looked over my shoulder to where Dom was standing, watching quietly. Take care of her, she said. Clear order. With my life, he replied simply. And in that moment, with my mother hugging me and Dominic there, something inside me that had been tense for weeks finally relaxed. It wasn't going to be easy. Maggie was still clearly processing, still had reservations, would still watch every move, but she had given her blessing. Reluctant, conditional, but a blessing nonetheless. And that was all I needed. Later, when my mother finally left after hours of tense but necessary conversation, I collapsed on the couch, emotionally exhausted. Dom sat beside me, pulled me into his arms, and we stayed there in silence for a long time. Are you really getting out? I finally asked. From crime? It wasn't just to calm her down. I started the transition 2 weeks ago, he admitted, since you said you'd stay, because I want a future with you, Avery. A real future. And that means being the man you deserve. Tears burned my eyes again. You don't have to change for me. I do. He cut me off gently. For you, yes, but also for myself, because I'm tired, Avery. Tired of the violence, the blood. Always looking over my shoulder. I want peace. I want to wake up in the morning, and my biggest concern is whether you're going to throw a pillow at me again. I laughed through tears. Idiot. You're idiot, he corrected, kissing me softly. My idiot, I agreed. And for the first time in weeks, in months maybe, I breathed completely free. No secrets, no lies, no fear. Just us. Finally. Completely. Just us. Chapter 9. Transition.
It ends tonight.
6 months. 6 months since that catastrophic morning when my mother found out everything, since her reluctant blessing, since we stopped hiding and started really living. And what a difference 6 months made. I was sitting in my own clinic, small but perfectly mine, looking at the framed diploma on the wall, still kind of in disbelief that all of this was real. Mitchell Physical Therapy Clinic said the sign out front, simple and professional, and every time I saw it I felt that good tightness in my chest, that mixture of pride and gratitude. Dominic had invested, obviously, but not like I'd imagined, not taking over or controlling everything. He had simply put the money in my account, said, "Make your dream come true," and stepped back, leaving every decision, every choice, completely in my hands. The clinic was mine, the dream was mine, and it was working. 3 months open, and I already had a waiting list, regular patients. I'd even hired a part-time receptionist. It wasn't an empire like what Dom had built, but it was mine, honest, clean, and made me happy in a way I'd never imagined possible. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. "Mitchell Clinic," I answered professionally. "How was your day?" Dom's rough and familiar voice came from the other end, and I couldn't hold back the smile. "Good. Saved 3 backs today. Helped a 70-year-old woman walk without pain again, and convinced a stubborn athlete that rest is part of recovery." "Impressive," he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. "And you?" "Avoided killing 2 annoying clients at the office today." I laughed out loud. "Progress. I'm trying," he said. humor clear. Come home soon? I miss you. My heart did that stupid melting thing. 6 months together, and he could still make me feel this way with simple phrases. Already leaving. I love you more. Dominic's transition from crime to legal life had been smoother than I expected, mainly because he had planned meticulously before even telling me. He had passed the empire to a trustworthy successor, someone he'd mentored for years, keeping only silent participation in completely legal businesses. Now he was officially a security consultant, working with companies that needed to protect executives, create security protocols, that sort of thing, using his knowledge of the criminal world to protect people from it. Ironic, but effective, and lucrative, although money had never really been a problem. But most importantly, he was happy, or at least more at peace than I'd ever seen him. Less tense, less looking over his shoulder, less waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares. He still had bad days. Scars didn't disappear overnight, but he was improving, growing, transforming into the man he always deserved to be. I got home, our home, because yes, it was officially ours now, and found Dom in the kitchen, wearing an apron, stirring something on the stove. The scene was so domestic, so absurdly normal, that I had to stop in the doorway and just watch for a moment. Dominic Kane, former organized crime boss, in a striped apron, cooking dinner on a Saturday night. Are you going to stand there or help me? He asked without turning, always knowing when I was around. Admiring the view, I said, approaching, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. You in an apron is my new fantasy. He laughed, that low sound I loved. Save it for later. Now taste this and tell me if it needs more salt. I tasted the spoon he offered. Perfect. When did you become a chef? When I realized my clumsy girlfriend would burn the house down if I left her to cook alone. Hey, I hit his shoulder. I'm not that bad. He turned, pulled me close, kissed me softly. You're terrible in the kitchen, love, but I love you anyway. Lucky for you, I have other talents, I said against his lips. Many others, he agreed, deepening the kiss until the oven timer went off. Later, during dinner, we talked about our days, routine that never got old, that always seemed new and special somehow. How are the annoying clients? I asked, twirling spaghetti on my fork. Alive, surprisingly, he said dryly. One of them thought he knew more about security than me. Took 3 hours to convince him that yes, cameras in the executive bathroom are unnecessary invasion of privacy. 3 hours? I laughed. In the old days, you would have solved it in 3 minutes. In the old days, I would have broken his nose and that would be it, he admitted without shame. Now I use words. Personal growth. I'm so proud, I said, and it was genuine. He took my hand across the table, intertwined our fingers. Wouldn't be possible without you. The funny part, or frustrating depending on your point of view, was that my motor coordination continued to be an absolute disaster. The next morning, I was running late for the clinic, trying to grab my bag, keys, coffee, everything at once, when I tripped over my own foot. I didn't even see the floor coming because strong arms caught me, like they always caught me. Graceful as always, Dom said, that teasing tone he used when he was making fun of me. Don't start, I warned, but I was already smiling. 6 months living together and you still haven't learned to walk? He continued, setting me on my feet but not letting go. Truly impressive. Are you complaining? I asked, wrapping my arms around his neck. Never, he said, kissing me deeply. I love having an excuse to catch you. Convenient, I murmured against his lips. Very. Family dinners had become a Sunday tradition. Maggie would come, bring food even though I insisted she didn't need to, and we'd spend hours talking, laughing, being a real family. At first it had been tense, my mother still processing, still adjusting to the reality that her daughter was with the man she'd practically raised as a son. But time healed, and seeing the two of us together, seeing how Dom treated me, how he'd changed, had gradually softened her. That particular Sunday, the 3 of us were in the living room after dinner, me curled up on the couch next to Dom, my mother in the armchair across from us, watching us with an expression I couldn't fully decipher. Are you okay, Dominic? She asked suddenly. He seemed surprised by the question. I am. Why? You seem different, she said thoughtfully. Lighter, happy maybe. He looked at me, smiled that small smile reserved for private moments. I'm better than I've ever been. Thanks to you two. Tears shone in my mother's eyes, but she was smiling. Careful, Dominic. I might get used to you like this. Normal, functional, almost boring. Almost, I protested. He's completely boring now. He complains when I leave clothes on the chair. Because you have an entire closet, Dom countered, poking me. You don't need to use the chair as extra hanger space. Maggie laughed. Genuine and light sound, and something in my chest tightened seeing her like this, relaxed, accepting, maybe even happy for us. You two are ridiculous, she said, standing up, and perfect for each other. Go figure. Life was good, stable, happy even. I should have known it wouldn't last without at least one bump. The problem appeared on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after that perfect dinner. I was closing the clinic, Last patient had left, and I was locking the door when I felt something, that feeling of being watched. I turned, and my blood ran cold. A man was standing across the street, looking directly at me, and even from a distance I could see the anger on his face, the way his hands closed into fists. He took a step forward, clearly coming in my direction, and instinct made me grab my phone, dial Dom with shaking hands. "Love?" He answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" "Dom," my voice came out small, scared. "There's a man here. He's looking at me in a way. I'm scared. Where are you?" His voice changed instantly, becoming sharp, dangerous. "Clinic. Just closed. Lock yourself inside. Don't come out. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Dominic arrived in 7, not 10. And when he got out of the car, there was something in him I hadn't seen in months. That predator tension. That silent promise of violence. The man was still there, closer now, and when he saw Dom, he froze. "You," the man spat, and there was so much hatred there. "I thought you'd run away, Kane. Turned coward?" "Marcus," Dom said, voice ice cold. "I thought it was clear. I'm out. There's no reason for this anymore." "You killed my brother," Marcus shouted, advancing. "And you think you can just leave, have a happy life, while my brother is dead?" My heart stopped. This was about his past, about things he'd done, people he'd hurt, and this man wanted revenge. Dom positioned himself between me and Marcus, blocking completely. "Your brother betrayed me, sold information that almost killed people under my protection. You know the rules. And you know revenge," Marcus shot back. "So here it is, eye for an eye." He pulled something, knife glinting under the streetlight, and I screamed without thinking. But Dom didn't move, didn't back away, just stood there, calm in a terrifying way. "Do you really want to do this?" Dom asked quietly. "Here? Now? In front of her? Knowing there are cameras everywhere, that police will come, that you'll spend the rest of your life in prison for nothing?" "It's worth it," Marcus said, but there was hesitation now. "Is it?" Dom took a step forward, unarmed, vulnerable. "Your brother chose betrayal. You're going to choose to destroy your own life for him? Leave your mother without both sons." Marcus wavered, knife trembling in his hand. "I know where you live, Marcus," Dom continued, voice still calm. "I know your mother's sick. I know you have a 6-year-old niece you take care of. Do you really want her to visit you in prison? Grow up without you? You don't know anything." "I know everything," Dom cut him off, "because it was my job to know, but it's not anymore. I'm out, Marcus, and you can stay stuck in the past, you can kill me and destroy your life, or you can let it go. Move on. Choose a future for you and your family." Tense silence. Long. Impossible. Then Marcus lowered the knife, tears streaming. "I hate you." "I know," Dom said gently, "and you have the right, but I'm not that man anymore, and you don't have to be this person." Marcus looked at me then, at where I was trembling behind Dom, and something in him broke. "Get out of here, Kane, and don't come back." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness, and Dom immediately turned to me, hands checking if I was okay. "Are you okay? Did he touch you? Hurt you?" "I'm fine," I said, throwing myself into his arms. You could have killed him." "I could have," he admitted against my hair. "Why didn't you?" He pulled me away just enough to look into my eyes. "Because I'm not that man anymore, Avery. That man who solved everything with violence died. I'm the man you love now, better, different. And I love this man," I said, tears streaming. "I love this man so much." He kissed me right there, in the empty parking lot, under the stars, and it was promise and relief and love all mixed together. The past had come to collect, but he had chosen the future, had chosen to be better, had chosen me. Chapter 10, Forever starts now.
Marry me.
1 year. 1 full year since that catastrophic morning when Dominic Kane entered the wrong room and saw me in a sports bra. Since the moment that changed absolutely everything. I was lying in bed on a Saturday morning, still drowsy, when I felt lips tracing my neck, moving up my jaw, until they finally found my mouth. I opened my eyes slowly, and there he was, already awake, watching me with that intensity that still made my heart race. "Good morning," I murmured, smiling. 1 year, he said quietly, fingers tracing my face. "It's been a year today. Since you saw me almost naked and were traumatized?" I teased. He laughed, low and rough sound. "Traumatized is one word. I'd say eternally marked, obsessed, completely ruined for anyone else. Dramatic, honest," he corrected, kissing me deeply. "It was the best day of my life. I thought it was the worst," I said against his lips. "Delicious lie," he admitted, smiling. "It was the best. Changed everything. Gave me you." My heart melted completely. 1 year. And he could still make me feel this way. Butterflies in my stomach, racing heart, completely in love. "I love you," I said simply. "Love you more," he replied, pulling me closer. What I didn't know was that Dominic had plans. Big, terrifying, perfect plans. He had spent the last 3 weeks obsessively planning, and Julian was loving every second of the drama. "Boss," Julian said on a Tuesday, 2 weeks earlier, watching Dom stare at the small velvet box for the 20th time. You face assassins without blinking. A ring scares you? Yes, Dom admitted without shame. What if she says no? She's not going to say no, Julian said with absolute certainty. That woman loves you in a way that's almost embarrassing to watch. She'll say yes before you finish asking. You don't know that. I do know, Julian insisted. Everyone knows. You two are ridiculously obvious. She looks at you like you hung the moon. You look at her like she is the moon. Dom laughed nervously, putting the box away again. It needs to be perfect. It will be, Julian assured, because it's from you. That's all that matters to her. Dominic had thought of 1,000 ways to ask. Romantic dinner at an expensive restaurant, trip to an exotic place, big public gesture with flowers and music. But nothing felt right. Nothing felt like us enough, until he had the perfect idea. It was a Thursday night, 3 weeks after that 1-year anniversary, and I was closing the clinic, tired but satisfied after a full day. I was putting away the last equipment when I heard the door open. Sorry, we're closed, I said without turning. You can call tomorrow to schedule. Even for me? I turned and there was Dom, leaning against the door frame, smiling that smile that was only mine. For you, there's always an exception, I said, going to him, getting on my tiptoes to kiss him. What brings you here? I need physical therapy, he said, and there was something in his tone, something I couldn't identify. Is your back hurting? I asked immediately, worried, hands automatically going to his shoulders. Not exactly, he said mysteriously, but I need a session. Now. In the room. Confused but curious, I led him to the therapy room, that same room where it had started months ago, where my hands had touched him professionally for the first time, where the tension had started to grow until it became impossible to ignore. Lie on the table, I instructed, falling into the familiar routine. He obeyed, but there was tension in him, nervousness I didn't understand. Dom, are you okay? I asked, worried. You're acting strange. I'm nervous, he admitted. Why? You'll see. He took a deep breath. Avery, lie here. What? I laughed, confused. Do you want a session or not? I do, but you're the one who needs to lie down, please. On your back. Even more confused. I climbed onto the table, lay on my back looking at the ceiling, not understanding anything that was happening. I felt him move, but couldn't see what he was doing until I asked, Dom, what? Turn your head, he instructed gently. I turned, and my heart simply stopped. Dominic Kane was kneeling beside the physical therapy table, holding a small open velvet box, and inside was the most beautiful ring I'd ever seen. Dom, I whispered, tears already burning my eyes. You healed my back on this table, he began, voice trembling and firm at the same time. It was here that your hands touched me for the first time, that you started melting all the walls I'd built. Tears started flowing, but I couldn't look away from him. You healed more than my back, Avery. You healed my soul, my life, made me believe I could be more than violence and darkness, made me want to be better, be a man worthy of you. His own voice was breaking now, eyes shining, and I know I'm not perfect. I know I have a past, scars, demons that still haunt me sometimes, but with you, I'm complete. I'm happy. I'm the man I always wanted to be but never believed I could be. Dom, I was crying openly now. So, Avery Mitchell, my physical therapist, my best friend, my love, my salvation. He paused, took a deep breath. Marry me. Let me heal you too. Forever. Yes! I screamed before he finished, jumping off the table so fast I almost knocked him over. Yes, yes, yes. He laughed through his own tears, took my trembling hand, slid the ring onto my finger, perfect, like it had been made for me, and then I was in his arms, crying and laughing at the same time, and he held me like I was the most precious thing in his world. I love you, I said against his chest. I love you so much, Dom. Love you, physical therapist, he replied, that nickname that had become ours, forever. We kissed there, in the room where it all started, surrounded by therapy equipment and memories of how we got here, and it was perfect, completely, absolutely perfect. The wedding was 3 months later, small and intimate like we wanted. Garden of our house, decorated simply with white flowers and soft lights. Only the people who really mattered. Maggie crying happily in the front row. Julian as best man, trying to pretend he wasn't emotional. Layla as maid of honor, smiling like a fool. Dr. Chen, some close friends, selected family members. Nothing big or ostentatious, just pure and simple love. I was nervous, hands shaking while holding the bouquet. Simple but beautiful dress, and when the music started, I looked at the end of the improvised aisle and there he was, Dominic Kane in an impeccable suit, looking at me like I was a miracle, tears already shining in his eyes, and all I could think was, this is my future. This incredible man is mine forever. The ceremony was quick, efficient saying the traditional words, but when it came time for vows, we had written our own. I went first, voice trembling but steady. Dominic, you walked into the wrong room that morning, but found the right person. You make me laugh, Make me feel safe. Make me believe in true love. I promise to heal you when you need it. Make you laugh when you're too serious. And trip so you can catch me. Always. Soft laughter from the audience. But Dom was crying openly now, without shame. Avery, he began, wiping his eyes impatiently. You touched me when no one could. You saw me when no one was looking. Transformed monster into man. Darkness into light. I promise to protect you, love you, make you laugh even with bad jokes. I promise to be worthy of you every day. And I promise to catch you every time you trip, forever. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said, smiling. You may kiss the bride. And he kissed me, deep and sweet and perfect, while everyone applauded, and I knew absolutely that I had found my place, in his arms, forever. Epilogue. 2 years later, the house was filled with laughter on a sunny Sunday afternoon. Maggie was in the kitchen, preparing her famous chocolate cake, insisting that the granddaughter needs homemade sweets, not that industrial crap. Julian was in the living room, assembling some complicated baby furniture, cursing quietly every time a piece didn't fit. And I was in the garden, 6 months pregnant, belly round and prominent, trying to water the plants without dying of heat. You should be inside. Dom's voice came from behind me, hands immediately going to my waist, supporting the weight of my belly. It's too hot. I'm pregnant, not disabled, I protested, but leaned into him because honestly, my lower back was killing me. I know, he murmured against my neck, but I'm still going to spoil you even if you complain. I dropped the hose, turned in his arms, or tried to turn, because the belly made elegant movements practically impossible. He laughed, helping me, and then his hands were on my belly, gently touching where our daughter was kicking. She's active today, he said, amazed as always. She's destroying my bladder, I corrected. Your daughter is violent, takes after me, he said proudly. Great, I rolled my eyes. I'm going to have 2 impossible people to deal with. He kissed me softly, hands still on my belly, and there was so much love in his touch, so much reverence. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For this. For everything. For giving me a real family. For making me believe I deserved this. Tears burned my eyes. Hormones probably, but also because he could still move me with simple words. We deserve it, I corrected. You, me, our daughter. We deserve this happiness. And when he looked at me, when I saw tears in his eyes too, I knew he finally believed it. Believed he deserved love, family, peace. Believed he could be happy. Graceful as always, he said suddenly, holding me when I tripped over my own foot. It's harder with the belly, I protested, laughing. Even more beautiful, he said seriously, kissing me again. And there, in the garden of our house, surrounded by family, waiting for our daughter, I had that moment of absolute clarity. A quick flashback passed through my mind. The wrong door, the embarrassment, the first touch, the therapy sessions, the growing tension, the first kiss, the fight for acceptance, the perfect proposal, the intimate wedding, and now this. Sometimes, I said quietly, hands on his face, the wrong door takes you exactly where you need to be. He smiled, that complete and genuine smile he reserved only for me, the best wrong door I ever opened, mine too. And we kissed there, under the afternoon sun, our daughter kicking between us, Maggie yelling that the cake was ready, Julian still cursing the impossible furniture, and it was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely perfect at the same time. It was our life, our family, our happy ending. And it had all started with a wrong door, a wounded man, a woman who healed, and the courage to choose love over fear, future over past, together over alone, forever started now, and it was going to be incredible.
Now let's move on to our hidden fun facts from this story. The repeated shirt, when Maggie discovers everything. Avery is wearing Dominic's shirt exactly like the first embarrassing morning when he saw her that way. The universe has a sense of humor. The perfect proposal. Dominic proposed on the physical therapy table, not in a fancy restaurant or on a romantic beach. He chose the place where Avery touched him when no one could, transforming a professional space into the most intimate and meaningful one of all. Stumbling as a metaphor. Avery's disastrous motor coordination isn't just a recurring joke. It's the literal symbol of their relationship. She's always falling into danger, into love, literally onto the floor, and he's always there to catch her. Even pregnant in the epilogue, she still trips, and he still holds her. See you in the next story, darling.